Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Good morning and welcome to INCRadio South Central States. Today we have a pretty interesting topic. It's about visiting the highest points of every state. And so with our guest today, let's go ahead and have him introduce himself.
Hello, no longer behind the cameras, running the cameras. Now I am the guest. The tables have turned on me. But yes, I'm Nathan Russell. I am the guest for today, and I have been to 32 of the 50 state high points.
That is so cool. And also with us today, we have a new tech person. So we do want them to say hello.
Hello.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Brother Romy, and it's good to be here. Thanks.
So this is so exciting because usually it's just Brother Nate and I. And so being able to have somebody else in here is such a good thing. But let's go to our topic. So let's throw out the question of the day. Our question of the day, which is in our chat, is how many states have you visited? And so, Nate, you said you've visited 32 states.
At least 32. I've been to more than the high points, but there's a few more. Does it count like if your plane just lands?
No, you literally have to get off the plane and go into town.
I have to remove Alaska then.
Yeah, no. Plus, Alaska should be one of the things you need to visit because that is a really nice state.
Yeah. Oh, we could talk about that high point. That one's pretty challenging.
We'll talk about that one. So for me, my goal also is to visit all 50 states, and I think I only have 12 left. And usually it's like in the mid of the U.S. So I gotta find reasons to go.
That's most of the ones I've been to is in the middle United States.
Yeah, no, mine I've visited all of usually the East Coast, the West Coast, right, Southern, and Northern, but like the things in the middle, I haven't been to yet.
Well, during the pandemic, that was like the only states that were open to travel, so that's where I went. So
now, like I said, I had a goal to visit all 50 states. But you're like an overachiever. You want to visit like all the high points of the United States.
Yep, that was a goal I set back in about 2009.
Why?
Well, when it started, let's see, I had just moved to Houston, living on my own, and just like, let me get into the outdoors and hiking. When I was a little kid, I hated it, but I liked it a lot more as I got older. And so I was like, all right, I want to take my first hike. And in the winter of 2009, I was a teacher at the time, so we were on winter break. I was like, where am I going to go hiking? In Texas, because not a lot of places come to mind when you think about like hiking in Texas and mountains, but there are mountains in Texas. And I was like, all right, the highest point in Texas, let me go visit that. That's what started it all. I was like, hey, that was really fun when I did it. And I was like, I wonder what the other states are. And that started this whole thing. Like, I think I'm going to try to get all of them.
Okay, since we're in Texas, what is the highest point in Texas?
It's Guadalupe Peak. I think it's a little over 5,000 feet.
And where is that at?
Oh, it's way over on the far side of West Texas, on the border of New Mexico, close to El Paso. I think about an hour and a half from El Paso.
Okay, so then when you find these highest points, are they usually places that you could drive to? Do you have to walk? How does that work?
Oh, it's a big mix of things. So there's a lot of them, especially on the interior of the United States, you can just drive up to. Think of places like Iowa, where you drive out in the middle of this cornfield on some guy's farm, and you get out and you walk, and it's pretty much flat. Iowa's is interesting because they have a whole museum about Iowa to go along with it. So you're surrounded by corn, and then they got like this little area where they mark where the highest point is measured, and it's on the border of Minnesota. So you'll find a lot of these like really low states. It's at the very edge of the state when it starts going into its neighbor.
Okay, but you said it was on a guy's farm?
Yeah. So I think it's private property.
Okay,
I don't quite
so
remember it, but it looks like a farm. I mean, you're completely surrounded by corn. I don't think people grow corn for fun. So,
but I mean, like, do you have to ask him permission?
oh no, it's open. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question because not all the high points are public and that you
Hmm.
can visit whenever. Illinois is a prime example of that. So trying to get Illinois' high point is probably one of the hardest, just based on the fact that it is only open like 2 weekends out of the year. So it's on some guy's farm. You park and then you walk through this guy's farm and then you go up this hill and then you're there. And he only opens it twice a year, 2 weekends a year.
So you've done that one.
I did. Yeah, I was lucky. So when I was planning a trip with my son, we were taking a big road trip. And I was like, hey, we happen to be going on this road trip when this high point is going to be available. So we kind of mapped it out so we could be there and check it out.
Okay, so of all the highest points, which is the highest point in the US?
That would be Denali in Alaska.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Or Mount McKinley, depending on who you ask.
oh, Mount McKinley's where in Washington?
No, Mount McKinley is in Alaska,
Oh,
but
it's Alaska.
there's like two names. I think Denali is like the Native American name.
Oh,
So
okay.
some people refer to that, or Mount McKinley. I guess they renamed the mountain Mount McKinley.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, because Denali, when I think of Denali, to me, it's just the park. It's not the actual
yeah.
mountain.
Oh, yeah. It's part of that park, I believe. Yeah. That one is really difficult to get because I think you have to fly in. That's one thing. You have to like land on a glacier. And then you kind of need a guide to get up there. And it's not like, all right, let me go climb this mountain for a day. Like I think you're on there for like a few weeks.
So is that comparable to, let's say, maybe Mount Everest kind of a thing?
You know, some people who prepare for Mount Everest will climb Mount McKinley. Yeah, because it can be very similar.
And so when do you plan on going to Mount McKinley?
I don't know, when they build an escalator and a road up there. I mean, I have a lot of these things like kind of up in the air. Like, how am I ever going to get there? And it's like, well, if I kind of have that goal set, you never know when the opportunity may present itself. Just like with Illinois, it's like, how am I ever going to get this one? It's only open, 2 times a year, but sometimes the opportunity you come across. So I
Okay.
just keep that in mind.
I'm from California. So what is the highest point in California?
That would be Mount Whitney, about 14,500, 600 feet, something like that. Yeah, that one's very difficult too because there's like a few that require permits
Okay.
in order to get on the mountain, and I think it's because that one's popular.
Is it also because it's usually at state parks?
Yes, yeah, a lot of them are. And for Mount Whitney, it's like there's like a lottery I think you need to get on to. There's like multiple ways you can get up there, but the main one, the shortest one, which I think is like 18 miles one way. So yeah, that adds to this difficulty. Like forget walking 18 miles, like go 18 miles up a mountain.
Yeah,
something
because
like
it's
that.
not
Yeah,
like it's not like a path.
Yeah. So that one I have not done yet. Maybe in the future when I'm like 80 years old, they would have built a road up there or something and I'll be able to claim it. But
Yeah, good luck with that one.
yeah, that one is on hold until I find an opportunity to climb that one.
Okay, so of all the places you've been to, what is the lowest of the highest point?
Oh, that'd be Florida. Yep. Britton Hill in Florida, which is not too far away from where I grew up. It's on the panhandle of Florida. So when people think of Florida, like they think of Orlando, Miami, that's on the peninsula. Everyone forgets, there's this other part, the panhandle, and that's where it's at. You drive up all the way to the top of the state, and you're basically on the border of Alabama. You get out of your car, you kind of walk like 50 yards into the woods, and then there's a little marker.
So, that one was like what? How long did it take you to get to the top?
Oh, that's like a 5-minute walk.
That's it.
Not even. Yeah. I mean, for a lot of these, even if they're easy to climb, you still have to drive out to a lot of the times to the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's typically what's going to be the hardest part. It's like, yeah, anyone can climb it and it's easy, but you still got to drive out there.
Okay. So we do have a question for you. And which of the highest points would you recommend to somebody who's like a novice?
A novice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I would say Vermont.
Not that hill.
No. Well, I'm thinking like you want the most bang for your buck.
Okay.
So this is why I say Vermont. So Vermont, you do drive up to the top of this mountain, but you don't drive to the top of the mountain.
Okay.
Okay. And it's like a whole park, so you do have to pay. It's not that much. But you drive up to the top and then you park, and then you get to walk along this ridge all the way to it. It's not that long of a walk, but it is very beautiful. I mean, you're on the ridge, so both sides you get excellent views. You're talking about like northeastern mountains, so it's very green, while still being very rocky, and if you know it's very rewarding,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that tough to do, but you do get some of the best views. So that's the one I would recommend.
Okay. So we have a listener from Jacksonville, Arkansas. What is the highest point in Arkansas? And have you been there?
Yes, I have Mount Magazine, I believe is what it's called. So they got a whole park for it, and it's a really nice mountain to be on. And you could just drive up to the base of the high point. So
Well, first of all, where in Arkansas is it?
it's like in the middle of it somewhere.
Okay.
It's one of those ranges. I don't know if it's the Ozarks or the other one, the Washitas. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's like a whole park for it. You can either drive to the base of the high point. So
Mhm.
in that park, I remember there's like a kind of like a road that goes around it. You can park at the bottom of it and then just walk up the hill. I parked further back so I can do, more of a longer hike. I did that one in winter. But yeah, that one's really nice. Arkansas, though, in general, like a lot of the mountains are covered in trees, so your views can be kind of limited. But that one's a nice one to visit.
Oh, nice. Okay, and then we have so of all the highest points, which was
Mhm.
your favorite and why?
New Mexico. Yeah.
Why?
So New Mexico, that is Wheeler Peak. That is in the Taos Mountain Range. I hope I said that right. But that's a popular ski resort in
Oh.
New Mexico. So northern New Mexico. It's about 13,000 feet. Once you get to that height, shortness of breath, the lack of air, you have to consider. But there's like 3, 4 ways to get up that mountain. And the main way is the shortest way, of course, and you just go straight up. We went the back way. We drove all the way to the back side of the mountain, and we made it a 3-day backpacking trip. So we hiked in, we camped out in hammocks, and then most of it's just like really woodsy. And then they have this alpine lake that you come across. It is absolutely beautiful, and you can't just drive up to it. You got to hike up to it to earn it to see it. And then you go up on this ridge, and you got just the most amazing view of this valley. And like I took pictures, but it's one of those things where like the pictures just can't capture. Kind of like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, you have to be there.
Yeah, you have to be there to see it. And you just walk along this ridge. I actually almost didn't get that one because I get to the middle of these two peaks,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, which one is it? I'm like, I start walking towards one. I was like, this can't be it. That one looks higher. So I turn around and I go up that one. I get to the top and I'm like, oh, it's not it. It was the one I was just at. So I had to turn around and climb that one.
So are some of these things like have to be like an overnight thing? Is this something you could do like on a day trip?
It depends. A lot of them you can do on day trips, like Wheeler Peak. And something you have to consider once you start getting into really, really tall mountains, you got to know the weather patterns. So I remember my dad, he wanted to stay up at the top of the mountain. And I was like, we can't stay here. It's like, look over there in the distance. Those black clouds, those are about to be here. And, thunderstorms can be pretty gnarly when you're on the ground, but when you're 13,000 feet up, you are in the thunderstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we got to get off of this mountain as soon as we can. And on our way down, sure enough, the thunderstorm caught up to us. We got hailed on, so there was hail falling on us. But we made it down okay for that one.
Okay. So we have somebody else viewing from Baton Rouge. So in Louisiana, what is the highest point and have you been there?
I have. It's on the northern part of the state. I can't remember the name, but I remember it's kind of in the middle of the northern part of the state. when you're in Louisiana, and I found out people like to divide Louisiana by I-10. Those who are above it and those who are below it. So like when you're below I-10, everything's like swamps and flat. But once you get toward the northern part of the state, it actually gets pretty hilly.
Okay.
Granted, Louisiana's not really doesn't really have a whole lot of high elevations, but you'll park next to this cemetery. So something to consider if you plan on going at night if that spooks you out. But then you just kind of walk along this road in some random, it's some really small town, and you just kind of follow this dirt path until you reach the high point. So not much to it, and I think they're actually like mining next to it. You can hear them mining, but yeah, that one's not hard to get.
Okay. We have somebody here also from Hawaii. Mauna Kea is the highest point in Hawaii.
Yep, on the Big Island.
Have you been there?
I don't know actually, because when I was a kid, we went to the Big Island.
Okay.
And I remember going up a volcano. I don't know if that was the one we went to, if we went to the top or not.
But the Big Island has a lot of volcanoes.
Yes, but the at the middle of it, of the state,
Mhm.
that is the high point, and there's like snow up there and everything.
So you might have, but you don't know.
I don't remember, no.
So then that means you have to go back there because then you can't cross it off your list.
And I've thought about like, all right, if I flew into Hawaii and I
Mhm.
just walk out the airport and I just walk, right? Because that island is it's not really densely populated.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if I were to walk, it'd just be like 30 miles up, 30 miles down.
Yeah, no. No.
Go and make a few days to backpack. I mean, 30 miles you could probably do in like 2 days, 15 miles a day, because it's like I think it's only a gentle grade going up. So yeah, I thought about doing it that way, and I figured if I get tired, I can just probably call an Uber and do it in like half an hour.
Yeah, no. We have Leia Hill from Biloxi. And so Oliver's asking, what about Mississippi?
Mississippi. I don't remember the name. It's on the northern part of the state. It is behind this neighborhood. I remember driving through some neighborhood in some hills, and then in the back of the neighborhood, they got a road going up to the top, and it shares space with a radio tower. So, convenient place to put a radio tower right on top of a hill. But yeah, that one is just, you just drive up behind this neighborhood.
Okay. So what are the precautions you have to take when you decide to try to visit the highest points of the different states?
Depends on where you go. So when you start talking about like northern places or places that get really, really high in elevation, then weather is definitely something you got to factor in. And if you're like in Colorado, in the Rockies, in the summer, they have pretty consistent like thunderstorms that roll in at like every 4 o'clock. When you look it up, all you have to do is like look up the forums, like what are the things you have to consider when climbing the mountains, and usually they'll list them out. There's some pretty good websites, but yeah, typically in the Rockies you need to be off the mountain by like 4 p.m.
Okay.
Otherwise you're going to be in the thunderstorm. And from my experience, thunder is extra loud when you're right up next to it.
I can imagine because it's pretty loud down here on the ground. But yeah, when you're up higher in the mountain, I can imagine.
Well, like when you go to Pikes Peak, which is not the highest point in Colorado, when you reach the top, you actually look down at the clouds, which is pretty wild. Yeah, you'll
Wow.
drive through the clouds and then you'll be looking down at the clouds.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So which one is like pretty easy, but is rewarding?
Rewarding?
Yeah,
Let's
either
see.
with the scenery or with the path that you take there.
It depends on your skill level, but mountains are rated on a system of like I think it's like levels of difficulty, and they go like 1 through 5.
Okay.
1 is like hiking,
Hmm.
right? All you're going to be doing is walking. 2 is maybe you're climbing some rocks here and there. If you fall down, you're not going to die, but you might get hurt a little bit. 3 is like, you could start getting hurt if you were to fall off. So you do have some, exposures to some heights, but still like it should be walkable slash climbable. And then 4 and 5, you're talking about rock climbing. And level 5, like they break it up into different types of rock climbing. Like we had a rock climber in here for an episode before. So it's like, all right, are you just, climbing with your hands and legs, no problem? Or do you start needing ropes? Or are you going to start like hanging upside down? Um, so as far as difficulty, a lot of the high points are at that level 1 difficulty. I would say like one of the rewarding ones that's not going to be as easy, like we mentioned Vermont before, is Maine's Baxter Peak. So it is at the end of the Appalachian Trail. So if you want, you can do the last 5 miles of the Appalachian Trail, getting that peak. You do have to reserve it though, okay? And the closest large airport is Boston. So this is something I had the time right.
So you had to drive.
Fly into Boston and then drive. I realized I did not print out my ticket to get in, so I had to find a random library in a small town in Maine and print it out like 5 minutes before that library closed. And then I drove all the way to the park and I reached the gate like 10 minutes before it closed. So, but yeah, you do have to get a permit to climb that peak. Now, the last 5 miles of the Appalachian Trail, it's really nice. So the first part of it, you're going to be hiking, just up some mountains and there's some woods. And what's neat, you'll run into people who've done the whole trail because you're at the end. So I remember talking to one guy who just finished and was on his way down. It was pretty nice. Although I'm not sure if he really did because like he looks really clean.
Wait, so how long did it take him to do the whole trail?
Oh, it takes several months for a lot of people. But after you climb through most of the woods, then you have to start doing a little bit of rock climbing. And when I did it, like completely enveloped in the clouds. I mean, it looks really extreme when you take pictures of it, but it's not that bad when you're there. So you do have to do a little bit of rock climbing. Nothing major, nothing. I never felt like I was going to fall and get hurt, but you do have to climb rocks. And then when you're up on top of the ridge, it's like real peaceful and serene. Everything's nice and green. It's relatively flat. And then it was like really windy at the end. But that one was really, really fun to do. And, if you're just, decently in physical shape, because it's a 5 mile hike up and then 5 miles down. So you're talking about, it'll take you pretty much the whole day to get up and down. But that one is really rewarding to do. Yeah.
When you do the different hikes, let's say like the ones that are a little bit more difficult, like what are the things you got to bring with you?
Water. Yeah.
Besides water.
Yeah. Well, don't downplay water because I've run out of water on a hike before. Me and my wife went on a hike in Arizona and we ran out of water on the way down, and that was miserable. I mean, you think Arizona's hot. So you want to make sure you have your water accounted for. I bring a filter with me, so I'll have a big water bottle and then I'll have a filter straw. And I'll just like dunk it in the streams and then drink out of the straw. So I did that in Colorado, and you get some of the most best tasting water that way. Just fresh ice melt, filtered.
And nowadays there's a lot of videos on how to get water from different resources when you don't really have like, a source of water.
Right. But you don't want to get to that point. You want to make sure you got all the safe water that you can drink. So yeah, you want to make sure you plan for that. The water, weather, of course. You want to make sure that you have the proper gear, like if it rains. So they say like even if it's like 50, 60 degrees, but you get soaking wet and then you have the wind blowing, I mean, you're talking about you're going to get hypothermic pretty fast. So, making sure you have the right backup, because the weather when you start getting up in higher places can be a lot more unpredictable. So even though the forecast may say it's sunny, it can change pretty quickly. With that in mind, like the most dangerous high point is Mount Washington in New Hampshire.
Okay, why is that dangerous?
So I think they've recorded the highest winds ever on Earth on that mountain. Yeah, you're talking about like 200 plus mile per hour winds, and it's not a tornado. Yes.
I was thinking like maybe like 70, 80.
Because there's a convergence of several fronts that just happen to hit that mountain. So they get really extreme weather. Now, is it that dangerous? Not really, if you plan it right. So when I went, it was like 50, 60 degrees the whole way up, and it was super nice. But like you come back like a week later and the thing will be covered in snow with 100+ mile per hour winds. You could actually drive up to the top of that one too.
Oh, you can.
Yes. And it's funny because they got the buildings up there and the buildings are like chained down to the ground.
Oh, wow. So,
So
okay, did you walk that one or did you drive?
we walked up. That was the year I also did Colorado.
Mhm.
I was pretty fatigued after that. And then I flew up there and met my dad and then we climbed that one. That one's also really beautiful. Yeah, that one's worth going to too. Even though you can drive up. We hiked up, but then we took the train down because I was not feeling well. I was feeling like really, really sick. So we just took the train down.
Yeah, I would probably drive up that one.
Yeah. And they got a cafe and everything up there. So
Yeah.
when the weather's not extreme, yeah, you could just drive up there and it's a really nice place.
So Jane made a comment which I thought was hilarious. So she says she remembers going to Pikes Peak in Colorado. As they got higher, it was scary. When I saw a sign that says Devil's Playground, I took it as a sign, go back down now. She said,
Yeah, they like to get creative with their mountain names.
oh, do they
Yeah.
really?
Oh yeah, there's like I know in Baxter Peak, in Maine. They also call it Katahdin. They have like one of the trails is called like Knife's Edge
Mm-hmm.
because you'll be walking on like a really thin ridge. So that's another thing to consider too. There's like multiple ways to get up a lot of these high points. So you can pick, oh, I'm just going to drive up, or oh, I want to spend several days, on a trail. So yeah.
Melanie was asking, was that the mountain where you lost your toenails? Tell us about that.
Yeah, because that summer I'd done so much hiking, it kind of beat up my feet, and yeah, I had to hike up that mountain, missing a toenail. Yeah,
Like, what do you mean missing a toenail?
it had gotten like so like ingrown. It was so painful, so I plucked it out.
Ugh.
Well, you asked, so
I didn't ask.
that's the reality when you start hiking several mountains. Yeah, that summer I did. All right, that summer I did Oklahoma and Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drove back and then flew up and did New Hampshire. Colorado was brutal. So a lot of people think that Pikes Peak is the highest in Colorado. It's not. It's Mount Elbert. It's close by. It's only a little bit higher than Pikes Peak, but that one's also rewarding too.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it in one day, but the 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 height, because once you start getting at like 10, 11,000 feet, the air's thin, and if you're not if you've never been up that high, the best way to describe it is like you're just like walking, and then you just feel like completely out of breath, and you feel like really unhealthy. You're like, why can't I walk a few steps without like being completely out of breath? So that's what it's like being up at those heights. So like walking like a mile, which could take you like 15 minutes on flat ground, can take you over an hour, because it's like you take 20 steps and you're like, I need to sit down.
Yeah, like I don't think I've been to a lot of high points. Like I know Yosemite probably isn't a high point, but even just walking that was a chore.
Right. Oh yeah.
So I don't know how you could do all these other ones.
Yeah, I question that sometimes too.
Mhm.
I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Like I said, I'm just hitting 50 states, period. It doesn't matter where I go as long as I get to each state. But I just before we continue, I just want to say hello to all of our listeners. We do have we just want to say hello to a few. We've got Froy from Jacksonville, Arkansas, and also Jerry from Biloxi. Of course, Melanie is here in Fort Worth. And we have Maria from Cleburne who says good morning. Um, there is one person here from the Philippines. Mario. Mario is from Brixtonville, which is
Yep,
in
Brixtonville.
Caloocan.
It sounds like a British city.
I know. That's why when I saw Brixtonville, I'm like, where's that? And then I saw, oh, Caloocan. So I guess that's the Philippines. But yeah, and then I was trying to see who, and then like I said, we have our folks from Jacksonville and Biloxi. Um, so back to your questions. Have you attempted a high point but failed to reach it?
Yes, I have a few. So the first time I failed to reach a high point was Georgia.
Okay.
So that was part of like me going up the Appalachians. I was going to knock out a whole bunch of them because
Okay.
they're all kind of lined up neatly. So you can, go one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so for Georgia's, it was the middle of winter, and I get there about midnight, and it is raining like really hard, thunderstorming. I'm like, no problem. It's one of those that you just drive up and then you walk up. Well, when you're up in the mountains, like nighttime in the mountains is different from like nighttime in the city, right? Nighttime in the city is like you still kind of have ambient light,
Yes.
even reflecting off of the atmosphere, and you can still kind of see the ground.
Mm-hmm.
When you're up in the mountains, you don't see anything. You put your hand in front of your face. I don't even see this. Like, I can't even tell. Everything is just pitch black.
Okay.
So I'm there. The rain doesn't help. So even though you may have a flashlight, the rain is just negating all that. And the trash cans were all torn open because there was a bear
Okay.
apparently going around ripping open every trash can. And I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm getting back in my car. I don't know where this high point is. It's pitch black. It's thunderstorming. There's a bear running around. So I failed. I eventually got it later on.
Okay.
And when I got there, I was like, yeah, if where I parked and where I had to walk, like there's no way I would have found it in the dark. And then I failed to get New York's. New York is Mount Marcy. It's on the northern part of the state. It's actually near Lake Placid, where they had the Olympics a long time ago. And my the reason why I failed to get that, I wanted to make it a backpacking trip. People love to glorify backpacking, like, oh, I want to go backpacking for several days. Yeah, the backpacks are heavy.
That's what I'm saying. That's why
So
I don't know how they could do that.
we hiked in a little bit and then we camped out, and then we were bringing our camping stuff up the mountain. I think if we didn't have that, we probably would have made it. But it being wintertime, there was a lot of ice on the mountain. Nighttime was falling. For some reason, when they decided to make this trail, they said, "Hey, there's a stream going up the mountain. That could just be the trail." It's just like you're walking in like water the whole time, and with like nighttime falling and things freezing and things were super muddy. It was hard enough like getting up to where we got. It's like we need to turn around. We're not going to make it. And if we make it to the top, like it's going to get dark, and who knows what the winter nighttime is going to bring. So I failed to reach that. I also failed to reach Utah's.
Where's Utah?
Utah's Kings Peak. So if you think about the little corner cut out in Utah, it's around that area. You actually cannot get to it from Utah. You got to drive through Wyoming and come in. So you come in from Wyoming back into Utah, and then it is 8 miles. That one is really beautiful too. So even if you don't reach the high point, just doing that one is really nice, and it's real gentle. The grade that it goes up, but we decided to make that one a backpacking trip too. After the first day, it was like 8 miles. We camped out by this lake, which was infested with mosquitoes. Yeah. And what was wild was that all the mosquitoes, you can hear them. They're up like in the tree canopy. And you're like, is that gonna like descend on us when nighttime comes? Because that's a lot of mosquitoes. You can just hear them the whole time.
I hope
like
you had
white
bug
noise.
spray.
Yeah, we had bug spray, but fortunately that didn't happen. When I had to refill my water in that lake, it was filled with mosquito larvae though.
Ew.
But after those 8 miles, I had gotten pretty sick, so I had to spend like most of the next day like sleeping basically, and then hike back down. So I didn't get to reach that one.
So do you have any plans of going back to all the ones that you did not reach?
For now, no. So right now I'm focused on like when I take trips to go with like family and spend time with my son and my dad. So kind of like put that on pause for now. So I did get about 32, so not too many remaining, but just to, you know, focus on something that's a little more important to me right now than, this own personal goal. Not to saying that, if an opportunity comes up, I wouldn't take it,
Mhm.
but, it's like I want to enjoy, the time off that I take from work too, because it can be kind of brutal when you subject yourself to some of these hikes. So
Yeah, I don't know how you could do it. So, Jane is asking, she said that Montana is really beautiful. Have you been to the highest point in Montana?
I have not. That one's pretty difficult. Granite Peak. That one, it takes I think 2-3 days to get up. There's some mountain climbing involved, so you do have to be confident enough to climb on some rocks, and they even have like a ridge, and it has one of the scary names. I forgot what it was called. It's like Dead Man's Ridge or something like
Mhm.
that, and it's like it can like make or break you if you can make it to it, because yeah, that one's not easy.
Another question was, what about food? How do you make sure you have enough sustenance without weighing down your backpack?
Dry food. So like the big thing right now is like bacon jerky. 'Cause, I mean, you think about bacon being just full of calories. So make that in jerky form where it's it doesn't have a lot of water weight in it. So that's really the biggest weight when it comes to hiking. Is like, does your food have water? So like instead of carrying an apple, you would carry like a dried apple, because all these like little ounces will add up.
But I would just bring regular bacon and not bacon
Yeah.
jerky.
I mean, there's also that too. I mean, if you're just doing a day hike, I mean, you bring whatever you want. It's not that
Yeah,
heavy.
yeah. Joselito Sibayan said yes, beef jerky.
Yep.
Um, well, trail mix. Hello, it's trail
Yeah.
mix. Is that something that you normally bring?
Actually, to go back to beef jerky, I will say something about that. On one hike, I was like, I'll just eat beef jerky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After a day of hiking and you're trying to chew on it,
Mm-hmm.
you have no calories to chew on that jerky. I found it too difficult to eat.
Jane says adobo keeps well.
That's true. With the
Yeah, but
vinegar.
but you have no rice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If people hike with rice, they'll carry it dry.
Yeah.
And then they'll just cook it on a camp stove.
Yeah. So I just want to say hello to a few more of our listeners. We have Joanna from Hong Kong East, District of Hong Kong. And then also Robert, who's usually ahead of us from Florida, is also on saying hello. Um, what would you recommend for anyone who decides? I mean, not even just to do all the 50 high points, but just to visit like one of the high points. What would you recommend?
Just make sure you properly plan. And if during the hike, you feel like you might be in danger
Mm-hmm.
or you might not be able to finish, don't risk it. It's not going to be worth it. If you, I mean, it's get real, you could lose your life out there in
Mm-hmm.
many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Just like at Nebraska's high point, it's filled with bison.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, if bison are surrounding that high point, forget it. Don't don't go near it. But yeah, just make sure you prioritize your safety, plan ahead, look at the forums, follow the weather patterns. Yeah.
Now, do you suggest like the buddy system, like have like don't do it alone?
Unfortunately, most of the ones I did were alone. But yeah, if you are gonna go alone, just try to notify people like this is where I park, send that location. Try to send it ahead of time, because a lot of times when you start getting deep in the mountains, you're not gonna get signal. Once you get to the top of the mountains though, you might get signal again.
Real, that's what I
Yeah.
was gonna say, because like you can't call for help.
No, you can't call for help a lot of the time. So that's where you gotta manage. You do have to manage your risk taking.
That is so cool. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. But I hope you all got something out of visiting the high points in all 50 states. Let us know why you would want to go visit all the other 50 states, and maybe we can do another episode on crossing the 50 states off our list. With that being said, do you have any last minute shout outs?
Just like to shout out my family, my wife, my son, who's recently been my travel partner, also my dad.
Anyone else?
And we'd also like to greet our executive minister, Brother Eduardo Manalo. We are recognizing 15 years of leadership. Of course, a lot of the infrastructure for radio and everything is because of his leadership, and a lot of those that have advised us we're also under his leadership. So we'd like to greet him. Thank you for successful 15 years.
Well, thank you. All right. So that comes to the end of our show. I would like to thank everyone who's out there listening and participating in our group chats. Like I said, keep sending us messages of what you want to see on the radio. And hopefully, we'll be able to do that in our upcoming episodes. And with that being said, we'd like to go ahead and say thank you to our CFO coordinator and SEBSI president, Brother Angelo Erano Manalo, and our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening.
This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.